Hello everybody, hope everybody's doing great today. Appreciate those of you who watch this video. I hope you enjoy it. And today we're talking about The Living Daylights, starring Timothy Dalton. His first go at playing James Bond. You know, he could have been the second James Bond ahead of Roger Moore and ahead of George Boy. There, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because he was the original idea to be the replacement of Sean Connery, but he turned down the role. I believe he was like in his 20s at that time. Maybe he didn't feel like he was able to perform up to Sean Connery's ability, so he declined the role. And it's 17 years later, he was reoffered. He took the role, made 2 movies. The Living Daylights is the first movie. I think Living Daylights has one of the best Bond openings of the series. At least up to this point. You know, I'm doing this little Bond marathon here, trying to watch every James Bond movie from start to finish. I did skip Sean Connery's James Bond of Never Say Never Again. I think after I hit the 2 Timothy Dalton movies, I'll go back, do a little rewind, watch it. The reason I kind of skipped it was because is it really canon or what? You know what I mean? So I kind of skipped it, but I think I'll go back. That way I can say I have watched every movie about James Bond. So that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, so let's talk about The Living Daylights. This movie marks a major shift in the franchise. After Roger Moore's campy era, you know, Roger Moore, he did have a lot of comedy type, you know, he's more of the suave, not so much the gritty. We switched to Timothy Dalton, and he's kind of like the complete opposite. He's all grit and no suave. I think at the time, just how I heard people talk about it, is they didn't really like that. They liked the good old James Bond, how he's all suave, a good ladies man, shaking and act stirred, you know, Bond, James Bond type of stuff. And Timothy Dalton's character kind of went away with that. Just went straight for like the more serious James Bond movies. And to be frank, I think this movie, from what I remember, is the very first James Bond movie I saw in my life. I believe I probably saw it on HBO, you know, because I didn't go to the movies very often. Parents didn't really take me, you know, and this is kind of like, you know, I was probably 10 or 12 when this came out. So it wasn't like it was really my age group. But I do remember watching on HBO, and I think this is my first James Bond. So I kind of grew up the Timothy Dalton era and, you know, not really with the Roger Moore stuff. Reading my notes here, sorry. But, you know, not even with Timothy Dalton's more serious take on the role, you do still got some comedic elements. You know, you do got M still with it, or not M, but Q's quirky gadgets that he gives him. You know, you got the rocket launcher boombox. It's pretty cool. Boomboxes were huge in the 80s. You know, why not make it a little rocket launcher? And you got one-liners like the woman at the beginning of the movie. You know, she's like, where can I find myself a real man? Bada boom. Timothy Dalton jumps in to her boat, and she gets her a little man. And, you know, even though Timothy Dalton's a little bit more grittier, a little bit more serious, the character still never shies away from a beautiful woman, right? So at least that is consistent. And then we got a good old Bond girl here. The plot kicks off when Bond spares a sniper, a young woman he was supposed to kill. He's attracted to her. At least that's my opinion of why he didn't pull the trigger to kill her. Instead, he kind of knocks the gun away. Later on, he find out that she thinks she's doing a good deed. She's kind of being blackmailed, I guess, if I remember right, from doing this assassin. No, not being blackmailed. She wasn't really killing the person. She's just supposed to be there doing it, if I remember that right. So our James Bond woman is Karen, I can't pronounce his name, Malovi, I guess. I'm trying to go by my notes here. Played by Maryam Diabo. All these names. This is why I usually don't name names on my videos. She becomes the Bond girl, a cellist by day, assassin by night. The chemistry between the two are pretty solid, but the writing can't quite decide if she's a capable partner or if she's a damsel in distress. She kind of goes back and forth. One moment she can handle her own, the next moment she needs James Bond's help. I will say, though, she's a lot better than the previous Bond girl in A View to a Kill. played by Tracy Roberts. Trying to think if that's the right name there. Tracy Roberts, who's always like, James. At least she's not that bad as a damsel in distress, but she can actually handle herself. And her and Bond make a pretty good team together as they're trying to crack the case. The supporting cast is a mixed bag, though. On the bright side, The Living Daylights gives us one of the most attractive money pennies, in my opinion. This money penny is probably the most attractive of them all throughout the series. Carolyn Bliss, and then you have John Rhys Davies as Pushkin, who brings real gravitas to the KGB side of the story. But the villains in The Living Daylights, can't believe I forgot the name, are kind of weak in a way. You know, they are weak. Like the main villain is not somebody you kind of remember. Not a very good performance. His big thing is he likes toy army tanks and reacting big battles. So like that's where the movie kind of lacks. If it would have, that was played by Whitaker by Joe Don Baker. You know, he's a pretty good actor, but being the lead villain, kind of weak, and that's one thing that this movie really hates. Personally, I think it should have focused more on Koskov, the slippery double agent, who's underused, in my opinion. Ironically, the underused, the best villain there. And then you kind of got like two big villains' deaths in here. It kind of ruins it, like the airplane, big cinematic airplane finale, that death, which should have been like the final death, the big climatic ending of the movie. Instead, you have that one, and then they move to the Whitaker death, which is him in his house playing army with his toys. Was kind of a weak sauce. The main death should have been the airplane, and it was pretty cool stunts, and then you got him hanging out from the back of the plane. That's one thing I did remember as a kid. That's like the only thing I remember of the movie as a kid, to be honest, was the airplane scene. And also, for me, The Living Daylights kind of runs long at the end of the movie. Like, you kind of think after the escape, the Soviet Union, that would be like the end, but then you have another half an hour, and then we go into like Afghanistan, and we get the whole Afghanistan war message in the movie, and this kind of drags on to the movie at that point. I wish they kind of cut that part out and just had it focus when they're escaping onto the airplane, and that's a good 20 minutes that they could have left out of the movie. That didn't really bring anything to the movie. And then instead of like a 2 hours, 20 minute movie, cut it down to about hour and a half, hour 40 minutes. I know I've complained every time I complain about length of the movie. Somebody always says something about why are you always complaining about the length of the movie. But as somebody trying to critique the movie, that's one thing. The length is a little long, in my opinion. Let's see, musically. Looking at my notes here, usually we got Aha's title song. It's very 80s, but catchy. And it's also John Barry's final Bond score of this movie. I did not know that. And he blends orchestra flair with synth beats surprisingly well. It might not be the iconic as Live or Let Die, but it fits the tone of the movie very well. My final thoughts on this is that Dalton's take is all grit and no suave. He's stern, bossy, very bossy, especially with his female lead. He doesn't flirt his way through danger. He's more spy than showman, and that's exactly what the franchise needed at that time, in my opinion. Especially in the 80s, everything was getting more serious. The Living Daylight bridges areas one foot still in the more gadget and glamour days. Like I said, the boombox special gadget, and the other stepping into the realism was perfected by Brosnan. Did I say his name right? Probably not. And later with Daniel Craig. To me, Brosnan had the perfect mix of the Roger Moore era and the Timothy Dalton era. He's still suave, but still grit. I think he put it off really well. Is The Living Daylights the best movie? Not really, but it's far from the worst. For me, it kind of lands in the middle of the pack of the Bond movies I've watched so far. Good action, good chemistry, but pacing and villains hold it back, and especially the villains. The villains really do hold it back. If it had a good, memorable villain, I would say this would probably be one of the top tier Bonds movies. But but Whitaker is very bland and very cartoonish. Probably belongs in an Austin Power movie. Anyways, that's my thoughts on The Living Daylights. Hopefully you enjoyed this as I fumbled my way through. Have a great day, and until next time, bye.